Yes, it is. Thank you. Okay, so now that I have the special meeting notice here, but I'll go ahead and begin this. Thank you, Sylvia. So I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Commissioner Beauvais, will you please lead us? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Thank you very much for coming. Today we are going to be having interviews of the 4 candidates for the executive director position of the Port of Port Angeles. I believe we began this I'm doing this from memory at this point because I don't have my agenda here in front of me, unfortunately, but I believe we began it with a public comment session notice, and if anybody would like to provide, fabulous. It's right there in the back. Thank you. Thank you very much. Would anybody like to offer public comment at this time? Yes. And you don't need to say your address, just the city of your residence.
Well, Squim. I just want to welcome you to our
And your name.
Philip Kitchell, Squim. I'm with the Port Angeles Business Association to serve as Vice President. And we have had a number of our members, I hope, will show up during the course of the day. I just want to welcome you to this, what I think is one of the most beautiful areas of the state. Tremendous opportunities here. We have obvious areas we need to improve on, including our education and stuff, but I am very proud of this area, of this county, the job the Port's done, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. And you're right, this is gorgeous.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Hearing no other requests for public comment, I'm going to move to item number 3, executive director interviews. And the first candidate that we will be interviewing today is Robert Uptagrafft. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for pronouncing the name.
Correctly?
It's a test.
Okay.
Does that happen very often, to actually get it right?
All my life, it's been a test.
So have you had an opportunity to meet
Yes.
the fellow commissioners? Great. So if we will just jump right into it, if there are no further comments from my commissioners. So first off, thank you so much for traveling up here and having this interest. So that really leads us into this first question. What attracts you to this position? Why do you want this job?
I see opportunity in this. Part of that question probably goes back about 20 years ago when I went through a divorce and petitioned for custody of my daughters. And got to be careful of what you ask for, because I was granted custody of the girls who were then 7 and 11. And the deal with the judge was I had to jump off the corporate ladder in the technology industry that I worked in. And, you know, as a result of that, there were a good 10 or 12 years of being a dad full-time. One of my clients actually had hired me, so I was working locally with lots of flexibility. It's kind of like it's my turn now. The girls are now 28, 31. The eldest made me a grandfather about 1.5 years ago. I do a lot of adventures as a result. But it's like, what's the next great thing? And this community is large enough to be economically self-sustaining, but still with a sense of community. We used to have that in the Puget Sound area. Seattle was more like that. Even Everett, where I live, had more of a sense of community. That's dissipated with extremely rapid growth, the dominance of the Boeing company in aerospace, which is all good, but I'm a believer that we should be spreading some of that love around to outside communities. In part of my role with Impact Washington, I was doing economic development work as part of the requirement of our MEP program that we were in. And Manufacturers Extension Program, Partnership, Program Partnership, you're right. I was advocating to my clients as well as others that with the rapid growth in front of us, with a lot of other issues that were taking place, that they should be looking outside of that commute umbrella of Boeing, because if they're going to have to hire and develop skilled people for their own company, they should be able to keep them. And we all know that when Mother Boeing needs new employees, they reach out to their supply chain first to begin to pull the great people. So I was able to convince Exotic Metals, as an example. They established a 50,000 square foot facility in Airway Heights. And our goal was to be one truck day away from Boeing. So over and back, about 12 hours for a truck day with a rest in between. It's worked out marvelously. Those people culturally, much like here, don't want to live in Puget Sound with all of our great traffic. I wake up in the morning, and alarm goes off at 5:30. Because I got to figure out, is it going to be an hour and a half commute today, or is it going to be a 45-minute commute today, every day? And it's getting to the point that it's Saturdays. And that continues to pull that sense of community out of the community. So there's an opportunity here to serve the existing business base, to help grow new opportunities, companies who are interested in growth, working with partnerships and collaborations with other organizations. None of my successes in business have really come about just as my effort. It's always been including others, building the collaboration, building working teams, so we're all focused on the same goal, we're all going the same direction, and we walk away with a win that everyone can be proud of, and everybody can, if they need to, hang their eagle on. But that's the opportunity that I see here.
So is it, I have this as a bit of a follow-up to that, is what experience do you have that you bring to the table for this job?
You know, there were several, and actually they were characteristically partnered with the port district. So in the port of Clallam, we recruited a Chinese company that was making, or is still making, egg cartons out of recycled paper. Worked very closely with Mike Armstrong to help land them there, and then keep them there, because there were a few bumps in the road. We both sides of that partnership got a lot of cultural lessons. Some of them were hilarious, but all were serious in terms of building the business. Today, they have now committed to building 2 buildings, not in Clallam, but in Douglas County, across the Columbia River, where the power rates are even lower than they are in Clallam. So 2 buildings will probably start in 8 to 10 months to support their growth.
Commissioner Bobet? The prosperity of any business line is dependent on adjusting to changes in the external environment. What emerging opportunities and emerging threats, so what opportunities and threats do you see for Port Angeles?
You know, there are a series of potential disruptors on both sides of that. If we listen to Warren Buffett, and if we watch the financial news this morning, the general feeling is that we're heading towards a recession. Buffett is making moves within his portfolio to freeze new employment, a series of other tasks. The news this morning wasn't great regarding the unemployment numbers and the new job growth. There's no single answer to that, but it's got to be a distributed risk in my eye. The Seattle area for decades has been greatly dependent upon Boeing, and just in the last 15 years we've really diluted that with companies like Microsoft and Yahoo and Google and name the tech company or the biomed company. To come into a smaller community like this, we've got to look at a mix of opportunities to ensure against a wholesale impact by a recession. The other thing we've got to take care of is making sure that we have a labor base for a company to land here and use. The silver tsunami, those of us who are turning prematurely gray, if we look at the numbers strictly from Boeing Company in the state of Washington employs roughly 78,000 people currently. In the next 3 years, 50% of that labor base will qualify for retirement. And Boeing's been planning for this for a long time. The supply chain has not. And we haven't done a great job in education of preparing students to step into those technical manufacturing roles that frankly pay better than a lot of four-year degree programs, and getting them deployed into those manufacturing companies. The demand is huge, and we're really going to have to pay attention to the outcomes of our education efforts. The old story that you can't be anything unless you have a four-year degree doesn't hold water in the big picture.
Well, Bob, I was wondering if you could describe to me your management and leadership style in a couple areas. One would be with court staff, your management and leader style with the commission, the Board of Commission, and then with our court tenants, and then the community would be the fourth. So if you could kind of...
So give me number one again. We'll progress through.
I'll be able to remind you, no problem. So court staff, management and leadership style with court staff.
I have a pretty direct communication style. I am a delegator, but I'm a delegator with the demand that we maintain visibility and accountability. I can't believe that I can just delegate a responsibility, an action, and trust that it's going to happen without some level of acknowledgement and accountability. I am not one of those guys that's wired real tight. Anyone that knows that I've been pushed to the edge will know by a reasonably intense stare and some quiet and very deliberate conversation. And if I've been pushed to the edge, I also know to step back from that edge.
Okay. Number two is the commission.
Direct communication. No, I would hope that we don't have to dance much, that we can share ideas and concepts, discuss the upsides and the downsides of those, and be able to work from a policy side from the commissioners so that we can functionally deploy on a strategy and execution.
Okay. And with our customers or port tenants?
Well, I think I'd have a lot of hands to shake in the first 60 to 90 days just to get eye contact. I've heard both through the Peninsula Daily News as well as conversations with some staff that there is some challenge in some of the communication. Whether that's driven by either side, I don't know. I don't know the veracity of that outcome, but again, it's direct communication and expectations. Congratulations and celebration when it's due, but direct in what we have to do. If there's a way we can find common ground, let's do it. But we also have rules that govern the organization.
Okay, and the last category would be the public.
I can be pretty affable. My style of communication, everybody is a client, whether they're internal or external. It doesn't really make a difference. I'm quoted often in the press in Seattle, in the Seattle Times, and even more so in the Puget Sound Business Journal. One of the reasons is that I'll take the time to talk to both press and folks from the community in part to maintain a clear path of communication, no deception, and accountability. And that's one of the things I really have to hang my hat on, is that accountability side. I have to be accountable for that communication and the outcome of that communication, regardless of how I intended it. It was received, if it wasn't received in the spirit in which I intended it to be, then I have a problem that I need to go square away. And I'm not afraid to go back and shake hands and say, hey, you know, I owe you an apology. And let's square that up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, back to me. So, I'm sorry, I didn't lay out at the beginning, you may have been told, each of the commissioners are asking their own questions, one each. And, I'm sorry, two each, so here's my second question.
Pat briefed me this morning.
Okay, good. So for the public, that's what we're doing, and then we received questions from the public, and we then will each take a turn asking one of those questions from the public. So this is my second question. As the Port's executive director, what unique strategies would you employ to grow community jobs and Port revenue?
It seems as I've tried to do the homework that I could do with the with available documents and available history, I don't see a lot of cooperation, interagency cooperation throughout the county. You've got an ADO sponsored in part by the Department of Commerce through their economic development effort. Of course, Jennifer is working out of here. A lot of other smaller factions are all out kind of doing the same, and I kind of get the impression that there's often a level maybe of competition between the entities, that the outcomes get lost in the egos, and that doesn't typically deliver the desired end result. So it seems to me that to be successful, that effort needs to be consolidated in a way that we get everybody going in the same direction. That we have common goals and we're sharing current information. I hate that game of hide the ball.
Mm-hmm.
It serves nobody any purpose except for the guy who's hiding the ball. It doesn't build confidence in the people around them, and it doesn't provide the results that are needed as the end goal of that.
So that's the strategy that you recommend to increase port revenues and create?
It's your business development role is out on point. Once they're in, you can encourage growth, stability.
In what sectors?
I would tell you guys should be very strong with forest products, with the maritime industry, especially with the Coast Guard's pending requirements of almost a fleet rebuild for the commercials, and aerospace where it fits. Everybody kind of has this grand picture of aerospace that's gonna make everybody grow, but there are a lot of pieces of aerospace that have to work congruently to be successful at that. Takes time. It's not easy.
Okay, Commissioner Bovee?
Okay, if you think economic development expertise or leadership is one of the strong talents you bring to this position, describe how you gain that experience. This is a multi-part, and if you need to repeat any of it, I can. Or if economic development is not your specialty and understanding it is a very important leadership role here, how would you proceed if hired? And what economic development successes have you been responsible for and are especially proud of?
So let's back up to the first question again.
If you think economic development expertise and leadership is one of the strong talents you bring to this position, describe how you gained that expertise.
In the field, on my feet, and sometimes having to dance a little bit. Often with port districts, often with economic development organizations. I was typically called in, I was the aerospace specialist for Impact, so I was typically called in on any sizable task, any need on the aerospace industry side. We, working together, again, it's the collaboration and getting rid of the whole hide the ball habit. By pulling team members together from industry, we just talked about Fibro, the company over in Wenatchee, Chelan, the Port of Chelan. We did a rapid onboarding program for Heat Techna in Bellingham. They had a very large contract become available to them. We had to ramp up very quickly. We did so with over, I think it was close to 480 new employees. Each of those employees got 2 weeks of training before we put them on the manufacturing floor, because we knew what that impact would be with just pure rookie people getting released out there. And we did that in about 10 weeks, from curriculum development to delivery of over 400 people. That was a very dynamic environment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Did you want to follow up on
Oh,
the
yeah.
other sections of that question?
Well, he did, because the other part of that was what economic development successes have you been responsible for and are especially proud of, and he described those.
Okay.
the port would like to do a better job communicating and partnering with our community. Any thoughts on what you would do to provide leadership in those areas?
I think one of the things that the port needs to do, having just spent a little bit of time here and walked around a little bit, I don't see a very obvious brand for the port. In fact, one of the people I was having breakfast with this morning said he'd gone for a walk, and there was all this great development on the waterfront, great benches and kind of cool artwork stuff. But there really wasn't any mention that the port had any hand in that. And I think you really have to celebrate your successes in a big way when they come, because they are precious. To create momentum for the next net gain, to be recognized. Can you repeat I'm missing an element here, but.
Yeah, in terms of better job communicating and partnering with our community, any thoughts on what you would do to provide leadership in that area?
That's leading the way to develop the collaboration, the communication, and removing the competitive element, and bringing in some consolidation and discipline to make that work. It's not easy. Everyone who's going to be successful in pursuit of business development has some level of ego. We expect that. That's part of the trait. That's part of what drives them. But we can't let that ego be a stumbling block to success. Nobody needs to own the whole thing. A collaborative team can be far more successful and sustain the effort over a longer period of time. Sometimes you just have to outlast the competitor in terms of a location. No easy answers, but there's a level of discipline and accountability that's going to be required from everybody in that chain.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we are going to move on to the questions that the public provided of us to ask. And I am going to read the first one. Let's see. Campaign and candidate statements often focus on creating new jobs, but the best jobs are often those that already exist. What will you do to support the retention and success of existing port-dependent businesses, marine, timber, composites, ship maintenance? Please be specific as possible regarding your strategies for supporting these existing business areas.
How much time do we have? That's a big question. That's a big question with a lot of different elements wrapped to it. Read me the first couple of lines again, please.
Campaign and candidate statements are often focused on creating new jobs, but the best jobs are often those that already exist, so in existing companies. So what will you do to support the retention and success of existing port-dependent businesses? So marine, timber, composites, ship maintenance. Please be as specific as possible regarding your strategies for those business areas.
Multiple strategies, we could be here until the weekend. But as a direct answer to that, I believe, often one of the most difficult but effective things to do is to be able to knock down the roadblocks to their success. Sometimes that's the permitting process. Sometimes that's a timing issue to get things done. Any number of things, but it's critical that you have the level of communication with the business owner or manager that allows for free communication to support that, so that we can get through the feelings and frustrations and get to the reality of driving change, and more importantly, making change stick, because we as humans tend to revert back to old habits when we get uncomfortable, and we lose momentum in that moment. Strategies are multiple and pretty much specific to the application. What works for a maritime company isn't going to work necessarily for a wood products firm. So it's identifying what the issue is, what would dampen their ability to maintain growth, and defining possible solutions, and working with the client to define what the end solution needs to be. We had an issue at Payne Field with a company that maintains aircraft. It wasn't Boeing. They're a big MRO. They had a huge contract opportunity that was going to create about 150 jobs, and it didn't look like they were jobs that were just going to go away with the project because of the growth curve that was ahead of them. And the company wanted to erect basically a giant tent that 2 737s would fit into. And I got called in by the staff of Senator Marie Cantwell to work on the project, and was working with Snohomish County, and I was working with the city of Everett, a number of other entities to pull this together. And we had one guy who just wasn't getting it. The then interim director, executive director for Snohomish County was on board, the senator was on board, and we had one guy that we were just getting stuck with all of the, you can't do this, instead of flipping the focus on what we can do and what we can move forward with. And I finally got his attention when I picked up a copy of the Everett Herald, and I looked at him and said, the headline on Monday can read two different things. One is, great win, 150 new jobs coming to the county. Snohomish County cleared the decks, opened the doors, moved through the permit process legally, but quickly, and that tent's going up in a couple of weeks. 150 new jobs. Or that headline can read, 150 jobs go to Wichita. I said, your name's not going to be in the headline, but everybody knows. And it was a change in attitude that had to happen. Sometimes you have to be direct without being direct.
Okay. Thank you.
Here's the next public question. What questions do you expect to make at the airport to better serve the current users, bearing in mind we are no longer an air carrier airport? So what changes do you expect to make at the airport to better serve the current users, bearing in mind we are no longer an air carrier airport?
Wow, that's like an inside sinking fastball, isn't it? I'm not that familiar with airport operations, and I'll give that to you. But in an earlier visit, I was asked to come out and look at the building out by the airport that Westport will be vacating, as well as kind of a walk around the airport with the pilot. The conversation was relative to the condition of the runways and taxiways. It seems like the FAA has challenged the location of some of the general aviation hangars, and that the terminal needs an update to to meet TSA requirements. So it sounds like there's a capital project in there someplace. I'm not sure how, as a commission, you choose to finance that, but to move forward and reestablish aircraft service, airport service again, I suspect that there's a lot of work to be done. And I certainly haven't had a chance to study it. It's not a question I anticipated, but getting aircraft service or airplane service out here again is critical, I think, to growing this economy, to be able to get people in and out, as well as goods.
Okay, got one more question from the public. Describe a situation in which you motivated your department or unit to exceed organizational standards, and what strategies did you use?
One more time, please. That's, again,
Describe a situation in which you motivated your department or unit or team to exceed the organizational standards, performance, and what strategy did you employ?
For our organization, Pacific Northwest Aerospace Alliance, our largest event of the year occurs in February. It has become not just a regional event as it started off 16 or 17 years ago. It has now become an international event. And as such, in the last couple of years, we've had a few surprises come at us. 2 or 3 days prior to the event, all of a sudden I have 25 extra people that want to come. And I have a convention center that says, oh, we're not going to have enough food. So which one of us is going to Costco first? I have a staff of probably 14, I think, that works that conference. It's become, and in fact we have now scheduled an all hands on deck meeting each day at about 10 o'clock for the week coming into that event, because we don't want the unexpected to happen. We try to drive the unexpected to become the expected so that we get it out early. In that case, I put bonuses on the line for every one of our people that's involved in the conference. Their job is to catch the problem before it's a problem. The microphones that don't work, the PowerPoint that freezes up suddenly. And as a result, they have created backups to backups. They almost over-anticipate. We could be running almost 2 conferences at the same time, but all the systems are in place so that our delivery looks calm, cool, and collected on the surface, but it's like that duck that's paddling across the pond at 50 miles an hour. His feet are moving. And it's a great thanks to the staff that pulls it off, but we went to bonuses 2 years ago. Most is a thank you and a reward, but it also helped focus.
Okay, so this is the second public question that I am going to ask, and it looks like we're doing well on time. It's about 12:35, and so we have, 3 more questions remaining. So from what you know about this port and this community, what are the 3 to 5 priorities? What would be your 3 to 5 priorities that you would try to focus on and work on in the first 90 days as the executive director? The first 90 days, 3 to 5 priorities.
That 100,000 square feet of building needs to get promoted in a variety of ways. Just hanging for lease signs on it isn't going to cut it. Leaving it up to the real estate industry to promote it is certainly required and a great move, but we've got to come up with some kind of a promotion around that building. I know that many look at that as a loss, that, and it certainly against the budget, it's a budgetary loss, but you didn't lose the jobs. The jobs simply moved to a different building. So that makes this a 100,000 square foot opportunity. Now, whether that's aerospace, or whether that's carbon fiber, or whether that's maritime of some type, it's gonna have to be a broad-based promotion to find the right player for that building. But I see that as a very usable building. And there isn't a lot of open space even in Everett, Snohomish County, because the builders are not building on spec like they used to. They're almost direct to lease at this point. So to find it, it's not gonna be easy, but there's somebody out there that needs, maybe it's not 100,000 square feet, maybe it's 80,000 square feet, I don't know. But if we can get the cash flow back in that building along with the employees, that's a big win.
That's one.
Hit me with the other one.
What are the other 3 to 5 priorities? That's one.
Probably a lifetime of meet and greets, a lot of hands to shake, a lot of eye contact to get, a lot of conversations about the functions of other organizations, whether that's first responder organizations, whether that's collaborative organizations like economic development, those with an investment in the community, those who are investors in the company. That first 90 to 100 days, I'll be burning a lot of business cards and shaking a lot of hands and getting a lot of eye contact. And listening, I think most importantly, listening to their stories. What frustrates them. One of the things that I use with employees when I first start off on a consulting engagement is I want to know what is the top best thing in their organization, what's the thing that they would not let go of, what's the great thing that they want to hold on to, and then tell me about 2 things that they could lose and not feel badly, in terms of process, in terms of product, in terms of support. Looking at that and then comparing between the employees often is a telling tale.
So the 100,000 square foot building and meeting folks, what's the third?
There is apparently some litigation ongoing within the port. It's critical that I get briefed on that, so that, and anything that might be pending, so that I don't have shadows creeping up behind me without my knowledge.
Environmental issues, that's what you were referencing.
Yeah, I
Just
have.
so the public doesn't think there's some other thing going on. Everyone knows about,
Yeah.
we've been identified as a POP.
No, I just don't know the depth of whatever that, I haven't been exposed to that yet for good reason, so.
Yeah.
Any risks, anyone else who sees a negative impact, if we're on somebody's having a conversation about leaving, their displeasure, let's get FaceTime on that, make sure that it's being addressed openly, but directly, and see if we can solve that problem before it becomes a bigger problem.
Okay? So that's, okay.
Okay, another public question here. There is another one. As the new executive director of Port of Port Angeles, will you make it a priority to provide videos of Port of Port Angeles work sessions and business meetings to the internet for the taxpayers of Clallam County to view when they have time in their schedules?
Absolutely, to the extent to which that is appropriate. I'm all for transparency, it's just so much easier. But there are certain business discussions and transactions, now I guess not transactions, but discussions that need to take place with the use of executive meetings. Doesn't say that a decision needs to be made, but a discussion needs to happen in such a way that action can be taken, or the demand for more investigation or information, so that a decision can be made in the future. But I'm all for the videotapes. I've they've saved me more often than they have been an issue for me when I've been misquoted.
They're a good reference.
They are.
We have one more
Okay.
question.
One
One
more-
more last
One
question.
more public question. Of the lines of business that we have, which is airport, what?
Go ahead.
Of the lines of businesses that we have, which is airport, marina, log yard, of those lines of business we have, what do you view as, in your opinion, the low-hanging fruit opportunities? Which one do you see has the most economic growth opportunity?
Immediately, obviously, is getting that building built, getting a new tenant in with jobs. Frankly, while aerospace looks really attractive, I think it's a long-term sell to get a number of aerospace firms out here with the infrastructure that's required for them to do their job well. I would tell you that because of the new regulations coming out from the Coast Guard on the fishing fleet, there's a big opportunity there. And I don't know how well prepared the port is in terms of heavy lift and all the machinations that need to be in place to support that. But there's going to have to be a lot of boats either built new or completely rebuilt. And with all of the issues around Lake Union and other port areas, I think this is a great place to do that, frankly. When I looked at the data from Employment Security about not excess skills, but skills-based for the county, maritime construction, welding, all of those seem to be in a place that they can support that growth. And I think it's, if you can get the momentum going, I think it's easy to maintain it. It's going to be probably 5 to 7 years of heavy maritime work with the new fleet.
All right. Do you want to ask that last question? Okay.
I thought we weren't going to do that.
And this,
Oh, I got those marked off as Pat saying not to ask, that they weren't relevant.
no, these are.
Oh, okay.
Is this your exit job from your working career?
God, I hope so. I'm 58. I think the number is 68. Having been a single dad for a lot of years, of course, that kind of extends that number to 68. Daughters are great, grandkids are great, but they're not cheap. Yeah, I think my retirement age is somewhere in that neighborhood of about 68. And I can't imagine a more beautiful place to finish it out. And to be able to lay in bed at 5:30 in the morning and still listen to Cairo radio about all the people that are stuck on the 520, the I-90, the 5, the 405, and just smile.
I have done that for years. When I get off the ferry and I come home, I watch my rear view mirror and they just disappear behind me. By the time I
Isn't
get
that
to
cool?
Joyce, I haven't seen anybody for 10 miles.
Very good. Yes.
Can I ask one more question?
Okay, we'll keep all these consistent
Yes.
with each candidate.
With that is, do you have any questions of us?
Not at this point. I think with the homework that I've been trying to do, and conversations with Pat and others relative to this process, I've been reasonably well briefed. I'll enjoy catching up with you on a more social basis tonight.
Great. All right.
Commissioners, you do
Wrap things
have
up.
sufficient time to do one more round if you wanted to include one more of your
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah, I'd be all game for that.
Okay, so we'll try to get this with each candidate. We're trying to make sure everybody gets asked the same. So I will go ahead, let's see. Describe some things you do to maximize the level of staff commitment, motivation, performance excellence, and pride. How would you engage with the staff as the leader to get them to maximize their commitment, motivation, performance excellence, and pride?
So I was thinking about that, more in terms of my interview with the staff. And I've got some questions for them, which is probably indicative of where I come from on this. How do they define a win in their world? What is a win for them? And when was the last time they saw a win? And frankly, I don't know the answer to that question. It's, all surmisable from my point. Success comes from accountability and visibility. It's evenly distributed. So as we build tasks and scratch the to-dos off the list and work and become closer to individual successes, we celebrate those. As a consultant, I kind of blew one of my executives away because we had a big party to celebrate an abject failure. But it wasn't a failure by the staff, and it wasn't a failure by the client. We had simply reached the end of a process that clearly was not designed to support the outcome that was desired, and it broke. And we learned more by that failure and that event than we could have trying to study the whole thing for 3 to 6 months. They had pushed hard enough on the process couldn't work. So a week later, we had a big party. And it blew the exec away who had been on travel when all this was coming down. So I had to kind of explain to him why I was celebrating a failure. And he got it right off the bat. It wasn't a failure by staff, it wasn't a failure by the engineers. We had a material and process failure. It wasn't a good thing. But nobody else had found that failure yet in the competition base with this company. So it became a competitive edge.
Okay. Okay. Understanding this community may be somewhat new to you, how do you see yourself getting involved in the community? How do you see yourself collaborating with other community leaders? And please describe your community leadership experience here or elsewhere in the past.
For me, on the community leadership, I, as a single dad to 2 daughters, figured out pretty early on that if I could keep them engaged in sports, I kind of knew where they were. And as a result became, in fact, there were 4 of us dads in the same neighborhood that all became coaches because we all had girls about the same age. That got us closer to the kids than sometimes we wanted to be, but certainly kept us briefed on where the kids were coming from. That was valuable, and it took a lot of time, but it was worth every minute of it. From the business side, I have worked with the Chambers of Commerce, typically economic development, because that focus was more in line with the manufacturing background that I had and supported with Impact Washington. We were part of the effort with Snohomish County EDC to merge with their chamber, which was not an easy process, but I think it's paying great dues now for the joint organization. It's reaching out, it's getting involved in public activities. I was looking at your kind of a duck dodge, your dump truck full of little yellow duckies going down the ramp. What a great opportunity. Go be a contributor to it, be there, shake the hands, get the eye contact, ask the questions, keep the door open.
Thank you.
I'd just like to expand a little bit on one of the answers you gave us, is how do you deal with failure?
Depends on what the source of the failure is.
Work.
If we've replicated the error, we have a problem, and that ends up with maybe some direct communication and a reestablishment of goals and what's important. I'm a student of Deming, if you're familiar with W. Edwards Deming.
Yes.
Post-World War II, he and Taiichi Ono are probably responsible wholly for the reindustrialization of Japan. There are 14 points to Deming's theory. 2 of them I hold dearly. The first is constancy of purpose. People know what to expect from you. How you behave, how you handle stress, kind of all of those emotional elements that we as humans carry. Number 8 is the most important one, and that is drive fear from the factory. Because the best product of fear is mediocrity. If there's an atmosphere of fear here, people won't come out and share ideas because they don't want to be called out for a failure in the course of their job. If you support that effort to drive fear from the factory, We interrogate data, not people. We get to the source of a problem so it doesn't reoccur by using data and the people's input. But that's pretty much the approach. It's fact-based, it's data-based. I ask my employees, if you bring me a problem, bring me a solution. I may not use the solution you brought, but it will give me context to what you believe the solution needs to be. And I've got to stay within the boundaries of my job description and the rules governing the port. So some of the stuff that I've seen come up, didn't meet the company test, but we were able to get to a solution pretty quick because it offered context.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that will wrap it up. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Bob. Really appreciate it.
And you already done your tour?
No, I'm on, that's
This
my
is-
last cycle.
Okay.
Yeah, he next moves on to a staff interview and then port tour.
Oh, so this is
And
the
then-
first step.
Yep,
Mhm.
and then this,
First stop.
right, and then this afternoon, we're having a reception at the Red Lion Hotel from 5:30 to 7, and the public's invited to that, so we'll be seeing this again then.
Good job on your part. There's no visible bleeding.
Yeah, good.